A dull thud broke the quiet kitchen air. A suitcase had fallen at my feet. Viola, my mother-in-law, stood there in her flawless beige coat as always, except today, her smile was colder than steel. Harper's pregnant, and every time you show up, she gets stressed. Aaron, tell your wife to stay somewhere else for a few weeks. She needs peace here. That wasn't a suggestion. It was a verdict. The man who once promised to protect me kept his head down, silent. I looked around the kitchen I had built with all my love and slowly said, my voice low but clear, if you want me gone, fine. But remember, I won't leave alone. I folded the last shirt and placed it in the suitcase. The sound of the zipper closing felt like a line splitting two worlds. On one side, the woman who tried to keep everything together, on the other, the wife walking away to save the last piece of her dignity. Aaron leaned against the doorway, hands in his pockets, his gaze lost among familiar things. I heard him sigh, softly, as if afraid to disturb the heavy air. Just a few days, Casey. You know my mom. Yeah, I do. The problem is, so do you. And you've never done anything. There was no reply. I walked down the stairs, my heels clicking against each step. On the dining table where I'd made his coffee that morning, I left a white envelope. No need for a name, Aaron would know. I stepped out before the tears could rise. On the porch, the March wind was cold enough to make me pull my coat tighter. I heard the door open behind me but didn't turn around. Sometimes, when you know something is over, looking back only makes it hurt more. A taxi was waiting by the road. I gave the driver my mother's address, my voice trembling in the pale mist of my breath. As the car pulled away, I looked through the rearview mirror, the house lights still on, Aaron's shadow frozen by the door, as if he hadn't yet realized that his silence had spoken louder than anything that morning. My mother's house was nearly an hour's drive from the city, a small home by the edge of the woods, the place I once swore I'd never return to. She opened the door as soon as I arrived, worry clouding her face when she saw the suitcase. Another fight. No, Mom. I need some quiet. She nodded, knowing some wounds shouldn't be touched while they're still fresh. That evening, after dinner, I sat on the porch, looking out at the little garden behind the house. The wind brushed through the lavender pots, carrying a scent soft as memory. In my hand was last week's ultrasound scan. My 12-week checkup was tomorrow. I slipped the paper into an envelope, ready to send it after the appointment. Not to make him regret, but to make him understand some things are worth standing up for, even once in a lifetime. I used to think marriage was a house, and a woman needed to fix the cracks. But now I know, some cracks aren't meant to be patched, they're meant to be left behind. I picked up my phone. The screen was filled with unread messages from Aaron. I didn't open them. I knew if I did I'd weaken. Instead, I wrote one short text: you'll get an envelope. Don't call me. Just read it. I hit send, then turned off the phone. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains as my mother knocked softly on the door. Casey, I made coffee. Come down, sweetheart. I put on my sweater and went downstairs. The aroma of coffee filled the air, reminding me of yesterday's morning, but this time, it didn't taste bitter. While she was peeling apples, I said quietly, Mom, can I stay here for a while? As long as you need. But Casey, don't let anyone teach you how to live. You have to choose it yourself. I looked at her, feeling warmth rise in my eyes, not from tears but from gratitude. 3 days passed. Aaron didn't call. I imagined him opening the free envelope, seeing the ultrasound. Maybe he sat there in the kitchen, sunlight streaming through the window onto the table where there used to be 2 coffee cups, now only 1. I knew he was hurting. But I also knew that pain was necessary. On the 4th day, I went into town to buy some things. While waiting in line, I overheard 2 women talking at the next counter. Did you hear about the Millers? The son who works at that big construction firm, his wife left him. Was it that daughter-in-law? Her mother-in-law's a nightmare. No one could live with that woman. I bit my lip, hiding a smile behind my shopping bag. Gossip travels faster than wind. On my way back, I stopped by the lake. The water was still, reflecting the trees that swayed gently above it. I placed my hand on my belly and whispered, Sweetheart, I promise, no one will ever define my worth again. That 5th night, just as I was about to sleep, I heard a car pull up outside. Headlights swept across the window. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Aaron. I stood by the door, listening as he got out, then paused for a long while. After that, the sound of the gate opening, a soft knock on the wooden door. Casey, I need to see you. Part of me wanted to run to him, to hold him, to forgive every unspoken moment. But another part knew it wasn't time yet. After a few minutes, his footsteps faded away. I leaned against the door and exhaled. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees as if reminding me that sometimes distance isn't the end. It's the beginning of awakening. Later, through Colin's audit notes and a voicemail Harper never meant to leave me, I pieced together what happened in that house. Rain slid quietly down the tall glass windows of the Miller mansion, where Viola sat on the ivory velvet armchair, back straight, hands clasped in her lap. In front of her was Harper, dark circles under her eyes and that practiced exhaustion of someone who knew how to make others feel guilty for her misery. I don't understand why he still hasn't cut her off, Harper said, voice trembling. Casey just knows how to use Aaron's kindness. You see, she's gone and he still looks like a ghost. Viola slowly stirred her tea, eyes distant, calculating. Men, Harper, always need a woman to keep them in line. Your father was the same, until I had to teach him his final lesson. Harper laughed softly, thinking it was a joke, but Viola's eyes didn't hold a trace of humor. Aaron's too soft, Viola continued. He thinks kindness can save a marriage. But kindness can't save a woman who wields her tears like a weapon. Harper lowered her head, pretending to agree, though jealousy flickered in her eyes. Casey hadn't only taken her brother's love, she'd stolen the family's attention, even while Harper carried a child. Mom, we have to do something. If Casey has that baby, he'll never leave her. That made Viola look up. Her eyes gleamed not with affection, but with the thrill of regaining control. Perhaps you're right, Harper. You have a plan? I always do. 2 days later, Viola's sleek black car stopped in front of a modern glass building downtown. The sign on the door read, Lynette Cross, Ph.D. Behavioral and Family Psychology. Dr. Lynette Cross was a woman in her 50s, her salt and pepper hair neatly pinned up, impeccably put together, and with a voice soft as a lullaby. Viola walked in, a perfectly polite smile fixed on her lips. Hello, Dr. Cross. I'm Viola Miller. We met at the Women in Business fundraising event. Oh yes, I remember. Mrs. Miller, please have a seat. Viola set her handbag on the table, gently opened it, and took out a thick envelope. Doctor, I need a special service. Not for me, for my daughter-in-law. Lynette frowned for a moment. You mean, family therapy? No, Viola said, her voice dropping but her eyes icy. I need a draft psychological note, Viola said. Not an official diagnosis, just a letter template, unsigned, marked pending verification. I understand, Viola interrupted, soft but sharp as a blade. But you can base it on notes, witness statements, observed behavior. I will provide everything. Photos, messages, emails. And of course there will be a suitable fee. Lynette was silent for a long time, then took the envelope. You know, this isn't exactly standard procedure. Standards are sometimes written to control others, Viola murmured. I'm protecting my family. When Viola left the office, Lynette opened the envelope. Crisp bills gleamed under the warm light. Beneath them was a stack of color photos, Casey smiling in the garden, another showing her on the phone, looking exhausted. Under each picture, Viola had written in neat script, emotional instability, easily agitated. That evening, Harper came into the living room and found her mother writing something on a file. What are you doing, Mom? Preparing for our future. And Aaron? He'll understand. One day he'll thank us. Harper sat beside her and looked at the stack of papers on the table. Mom, are we going too far? Viola looked up, her voice low and terrifyingly resolute. You never understood, Harper. Power isn't something you get once and keep. It must be reinforced every day. Under the lamp, her face was defined, beautiful, cold, and as hard as stone. 3 days later, Viola's lawyer Grant Lewis came to the house. He was a man of about 60, neatly dressed, with a tone that carried the faint contempt of someone used to working for the wealthy. Mrs. Miller, I've reviewed the file. If you want to transfer assets out of Aaron's name, you need his consent. But if you can prove Casey has psychological issues, you can initiate a temporary asset protection process. I don't want her touching anything that belongs to the Miller line, Viola said. And the baby? We'll let the law decide who is the rightful mother. Mr. Grant nodded slightly, jotted a few notes, then stood. I'll prepare everything. When the door closed, Harper lowered her voice. If Aaron finds out, he'll never forgive you. Better him angry with me than him losing everything, Viola replied, eyes never leaving the pile of papers. Women like Casey come and go. But I remain. Forever. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Casey was sitting in my small rented room, the streetlight filtering through the dust-clouded window. I didn't know that, in that other house, another version of me was being manufactured in words, in signatures, woven lies so intricate even the law might believe them. That night I heard rain tapping the tin roof, steady and low like a heartbeat. I pressed my hand to my belly, feeling the little life growing, and whispered, "Baby, I don't know what this world will bring you, but I promise I won't let anyone take you from me." The clinic was quieter than usual that afternoon. Late-day sunlight slanted through the large glass, leaving long streaks across the cream-colored tile. I sat in the waiting row, my hands folded on my lap, palms cold despite the heater. The PA system called patient names, mixed with the sharp smell of disinfectant, a scent I always hated but now found oddly familiar. I had come for the routine 12-week prenatal checkup. A short appointment, nothing special. I had no idea fate had arranged for me to run into someone who had once passed through my life like a breeze, and now returned with something that could change everything. As I signed at the reception, a deep, slightly hoarse voice sounded behind me. "Casey Miller? Is that really you?" I turned. A man in a brown coat stood a few steps away, his expression a mix of surprise and warmth. It took me a few seconds to recognize him. Colin Reyes, a former colleague from the architecture firm where I worked before I got married. "Colin?" I chuckled softly, half in disbelief. "Oh my God, I didn't expect to see you here. Did you switch to healthcare?" I shook my head, a little hesitant. "No, I'm here for a prenatal checkup. What about you?" "I've been with the state health system for over a year now. I manage records and patient data." He adjusted his ID badge as he spoke, his voice as gentle as before. But I noticed something different in Colin's look, now deeper and more careful, as if he were hiding something. You look like you want to say something," I asked. He glanced around, then motioned for me to step out into the small garden behind the building, where wooden benches sat among lavender pots. We sat, and Colin was silent for a long moment before pulling a brown envelope from his coat pocket. "I didn't know if I should give you this. When I saw your name in the system, I hesitated for 3 days. In the end, I couldn't ignore it." My hands trembled as I took the envelope. Inside was a stack of printed pages, and when I skimmed the first lines, my heart felt like it stopped. At the top, psychological report recommendation for parenting capacity assessment. My name was right below, and a clear signature, Dr. Lynette Cross. But what chilled me wasn't the signature, it was the entry under referral source, Viola M. Miller. The conclusion read, "Patient Casey Miller shows signs of emotional disorder, impulsive outbursts, not fit for infant care. Recommend temporary postnatal supervision of custody." I set the file down and forced my lips closed so my voice wouldn't shake. "Where did you get this?" I asked. "During a random audit of the system. This file was submitted under secure, encrypted status, but it was flagged in a pending verification list due to duplicate ID signs. When I checked, your name was there. I know you haven't had mental health treatment, so it looked suspicious. Are you sure? Isn't this a mistake? Casey, I've done this for 10 years. I can tell a fake record. This one was created deliberately. Most importantly, I traced the submitting IP. It came from Dr. Cross's office." "Dr. Cross? I've never met her." "I know." But an internal note said, "Information provided by family guardian, Viola Miller." I felt the air leave my body. Everything in my head spun. Viola's composed face, her softly cutting words. "What are they trying to do?" I asked, my voice choked. "I don't know the full plan. But if this report reaches the court, you'll be deemed unfit to parent. They could request medical supervision, even seek custody after birth. I gripped my hand so hard my fingertip hurt. Colin handed me a tissue. You need to go to the police. Or hire a lawyer. No, I said immediately, low but firm, if I do that, they'll erase every trace before I can touch it. I need to know how far they'll go. Colin looked at me with a mix of worry and admiration. Casey, you're pregnant. You shouldn't get dragged into this. I have no other choice. I won't let anyone label me a crazy mother. I folded the file, carefully slipped it into my bag. My hands still shook, but my mind cleared. Viola wanted to erase me from even the life inside me. Colin stood, his voice gentle. If you need help, I can keep the original in the system. I won't let anyone delete it, at least for a few weeks. Thank you, Colin. I owe you. No, Casey. I can't stand to see someone crushed for power. We parted ways right at the gate. As he drove off, I stood watching, my chest tangled with gratitude, fear, and a burning anger rising under my skin. That night, I sat in the half-lit room, streetlight shadows shifting across the wall to see the file still inside my bag. I thought about Viola. About Harper, who had sat there the day I packed my suitcase, her eyes shimmering with fake tears. I thought about Aaron. Did he know? Or was he part of this too? My phone buzzed with a message. It was from Aaron. Are you okay? Mom's worried about you. I am too. I laughed quietly. I walked to the mirror and looked straight at myself. The woman staring back had a familiar face but different eyes, clear, cold, and sharp. I touched my belly lightly and whispered, "Baby, I promise, no one will ever take you from me. No one." Outside, the wind grew stronger, rattling the window frame like the slow knocking of fate. In my mind, a plan began to form, frighteningly clear. It was dusk when I stopped the car in front of the house that used to be mine. The light from the living room glowed a soft gold warm, but as staged as a picture-perfect lie. Each brick on the walkway gleamed like the day I left, but now every step I took felt heavier, not from the things I carried, but from the weight inside me. 2 weeks. Enough time for a wound to start healing, but still too raw to be touched. I knew tonight, someone would try to touch it. I held a bouquet of pink tulips, the kind Viola always said were too showy for an educated woman, and a small silver-wrapped box for Harper. At the door, I straightened my coat, took a deep breath, and rang the bell. The door opened, and as I expected, Harper appeared first. Still polished, her belly showing now, her voice sweet as syrup when she spoke. "Oh, Casey. What a surprise." Surprise but not delight. I smiled, handed her the flowers. "For you. And, congratulations, Harper. You look healthier than last time." Her eyes flickered, then hardened into their usual chill. "No need to play teacher tonight, right?" "No," I said, slowly. "Tonight I want to have dinner with family." Behind her, Viola appeared. She wore a wine-colored dress, pearls around her neck, her hair perfectly styled, every detail of a woman who'd trained her whole life never to be underestimated. "Family," she repeated, her voice soft as breath but enough to drop the room's temperature. "Yes, I'm still your daughter-in-law, aren't I?" Viola studied me for a moment, weighing every word on some invisible scale, then smiled faintly. "I don't recall ever throwing you out. But fine. If you want dinner, come in. Let's see what you've learned during your time away." I stepped inside. The wooden floor gleamed. Her perfume lingered in the air, the scent of power itself. Rich, lasting, suffocating. Harper turned away, smirking, but her hand brushed her stomach as if to remind everyone she was now the special one in this house. Aaron came out from the kitchen, freezing when he saw me. His eyes filled with confusion. "Casey, you really came? You thought I was bluffing?" I smiled, my tone almost playful. Viola glanced sharply at him. "Aaron, you didn't tell me she was coming." "Mom, I didn't." "It's all right," I cut in, meeting Viola's eyes. "I wanted to tell you myself. One dinner. No arguments, no drama. I promise." She narrowed her eyes, assessing me like an opponent rather than family, then nodded slightly. "If you keep your promise, I'll keep my manners." Dinner was served in the grand dining room. The crystal chandelier reflected off the glassware, dazzling and cold. I could feel the tension stretched thin. 3 women, 1 table, each guarding her battlefield. Harper carefully filled her mother-in-law's plate, sneaking smug glances at me. Viola barely spoke, watched her eyes a fogged mirror revealing nothing, concealing everything. How's life at your mom's? Must be peaceful, huh? Sweet tone, but every word was edged with glass. I took a sip of water, tilting my head slightly. Yes. Much quieter than listening to people plan my life for me. Viola's eyes sharpened. Harper pressed her lips together, then gave a fake laugh. Oh, I was asking. I know. I set down my glass, gaze steady on her. But sometimes, the kindest questions come from the least honest mouths. Viola tapped her spoon lightly against the glass. Casey, did you come here to test someone's patience? No, Mother, I came to say thank you. If not for you, I'd never have learned that stillness can speak its own language. Viola raised an eyebrow, her lips curving into a thin smile. So, you've learned humility. No. I've learned when it's the right time to speak the truth. Harper shifted uneasily, and Aaron, silent all evening, finally looked up. His eyes darted between me and his mother, worried. Casey, what are you talking about? I turned my wedding ring slowly, its reflection glinting on the table. Family matters, honey. And one more thing. I placed a hand on my stomach. The room went silent. Harper's gaze followed the gesture, confusion flashing across her face. Viola's eyes narrowed, her red lips tightening. I spoke softly, as if sharing simple news. You're going to have another grandchild. Time froze. The clatter of silverware stopped. Harper dropped her spoon, her gaze darting from me to her mother. Viola's face turned to stone, emotionless, pale. Only Aaron understood instantly, his hand clenched under the table, eyes glistening, as if every unspoken word he'd held back was breaking free. Are you serious, Casey? He asked, voice shaking. I am, I said, without looking away from Viola. Your child. And mine. Harper shot to her feet, the chair crashing behind her. No. You're lying. Sit down, Harper, Viola said quietly, her words heavier than any. Slap. Harper froze, lips trembling. Viola looked at me, her cold eyes softened for a second. So you chose to tell me this? Like this? At dinner? I thought it was the best time. I don't want to hide anything anymore. Aaron, did you know? No, Mom. He said, his voice trembling. I had no idea. But if it's true, it is, I interrupted calmly. And I don't need anyone's approval for this baby to be born into love. Viola looked at me, then laughed, a thin, brittle laugh stretched to breaking. I see now. You didn't come to make peace. You came to start a war. No, Mother. I said gently but firmly. I came to set things back where they belong. Aaron's eyes shimmered. Harper trembled with fury. Viola still smiled, a knowing smile of a woman who'd lost something precious, yet realized it wouldn't be easy for me to keep it. In that case, I hope you're ready for what comes next. I tilted my head slightly, gaze unwavering. I always am, Mother. And in that moment, I saw Viola turn away, hiding, for the first time, the flicker of fear in her eyes. The fear of losing control over the story. That morning, the Seattle sky was darker than usual. The clouds muted the light, casting a pale silver over everything in the house. Even the grand living room seemed cold, as if sunlight itself feared to touch it. I sat at the head of the long table. In front of me lay a neatly bound file, its pages stiff and untouched, as though no one had dared to open it. Aaron sat across from me, his hands clasped, eyes fixed on the floor. He looked like a man trying to breathe in a room with no air. I slid the file toward him and spoke slowly. Do you know your mother filed this with the court? Aaron's head snapped up, blinking as if he hadn't heard right. What? Filed what? Casey, what are you talking about? I gestured with my eyes. He picked up the file and flipped through it. When he reached the last page, his hands visibly trembled. This is a psychological evaluation? About you. His voice rasped. I pointed to the final line. Read who requested it. Aaron read aloud as if needing to hear it to believe it. Viola M. Miller. He looked up at me, eyes wide in disbelief. No. That's impossible. My mother did it, Aaron. And she signed it. The living room door opened. Viola walked in, her steps still slow but her eyes sharp, glowing as if she had heard every word of the conversation. Harper followed right behind her, holding a glass of orange juice, watching me warily. "What are you planning to do with that?" Viola asked, her voice calm to the point of chilling. "I want him to know the truth. That you tried to prove I was insane so you could take away my child. I did it to protect my son." Viola shot back instantly without hesitation. "You don't know her, Aaron. She'll destroy you like she destroyed your father." "No, you're wrong. I didn't destroy anyone." "You did." Viola narrowed her eyes, her voice dropping lower, every word like a thin blade. "What are you implying, Casey?" "You're repeating the same thing that killed him." Harper gasped. Aaron stared at me in shock. Viola stood still for a few seconds, then gave a dry, twisted laugh, as if she had heard a bad joke. "You know nothing. Don't talk about what you don't understand." "I understand more than you think," I said calmly. "I know his death wasn't a stroke. It was the result of years of manipulation, of being belittled, stripped of his freedom until he no longer recognized himself. The same thing you're doing to your son now." Aaron suddenly stood up, his chair slamming against the floor. "Casey, what are you saying? You think my mother—" "No, Aaron. I know." I took a piece of paper from my pocket and placed it next to the file. It was a copy of an old letter, the handwriting shaky, the ink blurred at the bottom. "Do you recognize this signature?" Aaron looked for a moment, then nodded faintly. "It's my father's." "Right. This letter was never sent. I found it in his old bank files. He wrote it to you, but he never mailed it. My son, if one day you feel tired, remember sometimes love isn't obedience. Your mother is strong, but she never admits she's wrong. Don't let fear make you silent, like it did to me." Viola said nothing, but her face turned pale. Harper set her glass down, her hands trembling. "Casey, where did you find that?" Viola asked, her voice barely a whisper. "In his safety box. At the bank you thought no one remembered." She stepped back half a step, eyes widening. "You broke into my family's private property?" "No. I uncovered what your family tried to bury." "Mom, did you really send Casey's psychological report to the court?" "I wanted to protect you," Viola shouted, her voice cracking. "I've seen this before. I watched a woman destroy your father's life with her weak tears and fake sweet words. I won't let it happen again." "But you are letting it happen again," I said softly. "You're becoming the same kind of mother who made him live in fear until it killed him." Harper burst into tears, clutching her stomach, her voice breaking. "Mom, stop it. I can't take this anymore." "Be quiet, Harper. You don't understand. Everything I do is for you, for both of you." Aaron stepped back, looking at his mother with pain in his eyes. "No, Mom, you're doing it all for yourself." Viola stumbled, grabbing the edge of the table to steady herself. "My son, what are you saying? You're taking her side?" "I'm not taking sides. I'm tired of living in your lies." She gasped, her voice breaking between breaths. "Everything I've done is to keep you close. Can't you see that? Without me, you..." Aaron cut her off. "Without you, maybe I could finally breathe." This time, Viola didn't respond. She stared at him for a long moment, her eyes clouding with tears. Harper stepped forward to help, but Viola raised a hand, signaling her to stay back. "Freedom," she repeated softly, almost to herself. "You say that so easily, Aaron. Do you know what it costs to keep a child?" "Yes, I do," I said quietly. "It costs your soul, if you use love to control." Viola turned to me, her gaze searching for a way to strike back, but her lips trembled, no words came. "Do you know what's different from love?" "Fear." "You don't love, Viola. You're afraid. Afraid of being forgotten, of losing power, of seeing people happy without needing you." Her lips moved, but then suddenly she staggered. Harper screamed. Aaron rushed toward her, but too late. Viola's body collapsed to the floor, her hand still clinging to the table edge. The glass on the table fell and shattered into pieces, water spilling across the wood. "Mom!" Aaron shouted, cradling her. Harper knelt, tears streaming down her face. In that moment, I couldn't tell if I was witnessing a tragedy or an ending that had been waiting all along. On the table, the family photos remained perfect frames, perfect smiles, everything Viola had fought to preserve. But now those pictures meant nothing. I watched Aaron bend over, calling to his mother in desperation. Outside, rain began to pour harder, thunder rolling in the distance. And inside me, there was only a deep calm, not the calm of peace, but the calm that comes when truth finally has a name. The night in the hospital carried a strange kind of stillness, not peaceful, but the kind that made you hear every breath of the ventilator, every nurse's footsteps down the hall, every heartbeat slowing with unspoken fear. I sat on a cold metal chair, staring through the glass pane that separated the ICU from the hallway. Inside, Viola lay motionless, her face pale under the sterile white light. Aaron stood by her bed, hands in his coat pockets, his shoulders tight, as if holding himself together. When the doctor stepped out, I quietly walked in. He heard me but didn't turn. "She's stable," he said, voice hoarse. The doctor said it was psychological shock and a sudden spike in blood pressure. I stopped a few steps from the bed. Good. I wasn't hoping for anything worse. The light cast shadows under his eyes, deep and dark. After a moment, he turned toward me, and in his eyes, I saw something I'd never seen before: remorse. "Casey," he said softly. "I knew my mother had forged documents before. This wasn't the first time. You knew." And stayed silent. He nodded, eyes dropping. Even that movement felt like a confession. I thought it was minor. My mother, she had a way of making everything sound reasonable. That time, it was about transferring my father's assets into her name. He was alive when he signed, but I knew that signature wasn't his. I saw it. But I chose to believe. His voice cracked on the last word. "And you thought staying silent would keep the peace?" His shoulders trembled slightly. The air between us grew thick, heavy as fog. "Casey," he said after a long pause. "I didn't know she'd go this far with you. I swear I didn't. Aaron, have you ever wondered how your father really died?" He looked up, his eyes empty like someone pulled from a dream. "What do you mean? Have you ever questioned it? A man in perfect health, suddenly dying on an ordinary evening, no illness, no accident. Just a stroke. But do you remember who was with him that night?" I didn't need to say the name. The hush was enough for him to hear his own fractured breath. "Your mother," I continued. "And in the old medical report, there's one detail that was ignored. The sedative level in his blood was 4 times higher than normal. I found it in the bank's records, the same place I found the unsent letter." Aaron sat down, burying his face in his hands. "No, the doctor said it was natural. The family doctor. The one your mother chose. The one who signed the death certificate." He gripped his hair, shaking his head as if to drive away the image forming in his mind. "I don't believe it." "You don't want to believe it," I said quietly. "Because believing means accepting that everything you were taught about love and duty was a lie. Why you? Why did you find all this?" I smiled faintly, a sad smile. "Because I'm the only one she couldn't control. I searched for the truth, not to destroy her but for our child. I won't let our baby grow up in a house where truth is buried alive." The heart monitor beside Viola kept beeping steadily. Each sound reminded us that she was still alive, that she could wake up, and that everything I'd said could never be taken back. Aaron stood, walking closer to the bed. He stared at his mother for a long time, as if looking for something that could erase what he'd heard. But Viola stayed still, her lips pale, her hand wrapped in gauze. "I used to think she was strong because she never broke down," he said, voice rough. "Now I'm not so sure. Maybe she was terrified enough to control everything so she wouldn't fall apart." "Fear is human," I said. "But when fear becomes control, love disappears. You think she killed my father?" "I think," I said slowly. "She may not have harmed him physically, but the records show years of control that slowly broke him down. With words that made him feel worthless unless he obeyed. And one day, he couldn't anymore. You know," he said softly, "when my father died, my mother didn't shed a single tear. She stood beside the coffin and told me, 'Don't be weak like him.'" I placed my hand on his shoulder, saying nothing. After a long pause, Aaron pulled out his phone, unlocked the screen, then set it down on the table beside his mother's bed. "I'm calling the lawyer." I need to know what my mother did with the court documents. And with Dr. Cross. Are you sure? If she wakes up, she won't let this go. I've let her control things for too long, Casey. If my father died from silence, then I can't live the rest of my life repeating that mistake. Outside the window, rain began to fall, each drop spreading into long streaks across the glass. I watched them slide down and murmured, "Sometimes truth doesn't come to destroy, but to free. We aren't brave enough to face it." Aaron squeezed my hand gently. The pain was still in his eyes, but there was also light, maybe the light of awakening. Behind us, the heart monitor let out a longer beep than usual. Aaron and I turned at once. Viola moved slightly. Her eyes opened slowly, heavy, then stopped on the two of us standing side by side. Her gaze no longer held its sharpness, it was a mix of exhaustion, anger, and something very much like fear. She tried to speak, but her voice was only a faint breath. "Aaron, don't let her take." Aaron stepped closer, resting his hand lightly on her shoulder. "No one's taking anything from you, Mom. We're reclaiming what's been hidden." Her eyes darted around the room, catching sight of the folder on the table. Viola wasn't afraid of losing her son, she was afraid of losing control. And that was what she'd lived for all her life. I stepped back, letting mother and son face each other. "Mom," Aaron said quietly. "It's time to tell the truth." Viola closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, a tear rolled down her cheek. Her hand gripped the sheet, trembling, like someone clinging to the last breath of control. The rain fell all night, as if the sky itself was tired of the things people had hidden for too long. When I woke, my phone vibrated, a message from Colin. "I found what you needed. Can't send it by email. Meet me at the old cafe. 5 o'clock. Colin wasn't the kind of man who worried easily unless what he'd discovered was big enough to change everything. I placed my hand on my belly, feeling the faint heartbeat of the little life inside me. Every time I did, I reminded myself, I have to be strong. I have to see this through. The cafe sat tucked away in an old street corner, the same place we used to meet when we worked together. When I walked in, Colin was already sitting in the back booth. In front of him was a thick envelope tied with red wax string. He slid it toward me. "Casey, are you sure? I've gone too far to turn back, Colin. This is the original accident report on Mr. Ralph Miller's case. I'll say this, they did a damn good job covering it up. Someone powerful must have been behind it to erase records at the state level." The file had a red seal and scrawled handwritten notes from the sheriff at the time. I skimmed through the lines until my eyes stopped at the conclusion. The collision was not accidental. Brake marks indicate the driver intentionally accelerated before losing control. No evidence suggests the husband was behind the wheel. Below it, a blue ink note read, "Witnesses reported a heated argument between the female passenger and the victim before the car went off the road. Possible motive tied to a high-value life insurance policy purchased 3 months prior, listing the wife as the sole beneficiary." The final signature was familiar, the name of an investigator who'd been dismissed a year after the incident. My throat tightened. "Colin." My voice trembled. "Are you sure this isn't forged?" I checked the record stamps. It's the only surviving physical copy in the county archive. No one could have recreated this unless they were there. "Casey, you have to be careful. If Viola finds out you have it, you won't be safe." "No, Colin. I'm not afraid anymore. Some truths, no matter how dangerous, deserve to be seen." "What are you going to do?" "I'm giving it to Aaron. He deserves to know who his father really was. And what his mother did." By the time I returned to the hospital, night had fallen. Aaron sat on the bench outside his mother's room, eyes red, his coat wrinkled, a man who'd survived a storm. "She's asleep," he said quietly. "The doctor said she needs a few more days to stabilize." I placed the envelope on his lap. "There's something you need to see." "What now?" "Casey, you can't keep digging up the past." "I'm not digging it up, Aaron. The truth is finding its own way back." He started to speak but stopped when he saw my eyes. I opened the envelope and handed him the first page. "This is the original report from 24 years ago." His eyes moved slowly down the page until they reached the conclusion. His body stiffened, every nerve drawn tight. "My father wasn't driving?" "No. Your mother was. And she didn't lose control, Aaron. The evidence suggests she accelerated deliberately. No, Casey. What are you saying? I pointed to the handwritten note. Read it. There was a witness who saw them fighting right before the car went off the road. And 3 months earlier, Viola bought a life insurance policy worth $500,000. She was the only beneficiary. Aaron gripped the page, his lips trembling, eyes fixed on the words as if afraid they'd vanish. No, my mother, she couldn't have done that. She couldn't. I wish this were a mistake. But all the evidence is here, Aaron. Your father didn't die saving her. He died, trying to leave her. He let the paper fall from his hand. For a moment, his eyes were completely hollow as if something inside had drained away. You've spent your whole life paying for a debt your mother created. There were no words to soothe a man who'd realized his entire life was built on a lie. Aaron bowed his head, tears falling onto the edge of the old report. You don't have to carry her guilt anymore. Truth isn't yours to bear, it needs to be seen. You don't understand, Casey. If this gets out, my mother will be investigated. She could go to prison. And what about you? You want to spend the rest of your life like your father? After a long, waited pause, he stood and took the file again. I need time. I know. But you don't have much. Once your mother wakes, she'll do everything to erase what's left. And this time I won't let her succeed. Aaron clutched the papers tightly, as if they were the only thing anchoring him to reality. I knew the door had opened, but what waited beyond wasn't peace. It was a storm ready to tear apart whatever remained of the past. That night, the hospital room glowed unnaturally bright. The white light hit the pale blue curtains, casting long shadows on the floor like spilled water. The air smelled of disinfectant, cold, dry, weary. I leaned against the doorway, looking through the glass at Viola, the woman who once made everyone hold their breath when she spoke. Now she lay still, her frame small, her hands frail enough to disappear with a touch. Aaron had been there for over half an hour. I didn't know what he was thinking, maybe about his childhood, his father, or himself, the son who'd spent half his life bound by the invisible thread of a mother's love. I walked closer, careful not to let my footsteps disturb the silence. Do you want me to step out? He shook his head. No. Stay. If you go, I'm not sure I'll have the strength to stay here. Viola opened her eyes slowly. When she saw us, her gaze wasn't angry, empty and tired. Aaron, you're still here? Yes, Mom. I know you're angry, but everything I did was to keep you close. I didn't want to lose you, like I lost your father. I saw his fingers tremble, but he didn't turn away. Her voice suddenly grew desperate, almost pleading. If you leave me, I'll die. He slowly released his grip on the bedrail, his tone calm, almost eerily so. You already died to me a long time ago, Mom. The day Dad stopped breathing. Her eyes widened, her lips quivering, but no sound came. I couldn't tell if it was pain or the first time in her life she had heard her son speak the truth. Aaron looked at her one last time. His gaze held no hatred, only a drained sadness. I spent my whole life being the man you wanted, but never the man I was. Now I finally get to choose. Viola tried to speak, but her breath hitched. She reached out, trembling, trying to touch him. Aaron stood still, watching her hand hang in the air before he said softly, firmly, Don't. There's no one left for you to hold on to. Her hand fell, her eyes closing. Aaron turned to me, found my hand, and held it tight. Let's go. The door closed behind us, the sound barely audible, yet echoing inside me like a lock clicking shut. I knew that behind it, a chapter of the Miller family had ended. At the end of the hallway, he stopped and looked through the window. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky was deep violet, and droplets on the glass reflected the flicker of ambulance lights. A cold breeze swept through the corridor, carrying the scent of rain still clinging to the roof. I heard him exhale, but it was lighter this time, as if the invisible weight had finally begun to lift. I squeezed his hand gently. Now you can start over. He nodded, eyes fixed ahead. Yes. But starting over doesn't mean forgetting. I won't forget what she did, or what my father endured. I won't let it define what comes next for us. His words made my chest ache, but in them, I also saw something new in him. the strength of a man who had finally stepped out of the shadow of his past. 3 months passed as quickly as a breath. Sleepless nights, burp cloths, the faint cries threading through the hush of midnight all wove into a rhythm of life I had never imagined before. I no longer thought much about the chaos surrounding my mother-in-law or the calculations of the Miller family. Instead, each morning, I listened to the steady breathing of the small life curled in my arms, and my heart softened with every beat of his. The day of birth came quietly. Aaron held my hand in the delivery room, the machines humming steadily, and with every push, I felt our child moving closer to the world. When the first cry filled the air, I cried too. It was the first time I'd ever heard the sound of a new life, and I knew I had fought to keep it. The doctor placed the baby in my arms. His skin was warm, the scent of baby powder and milk surrounding us, and in that moment, everything old seemed to fall away. I placed my hand over his chest, feeling his fragile breath, and whispered, "Welcome, my love. I'm your mom." We named him Michael, a simple, gentle name carrying the hope of peace that both of us had dreamed of. Aaron stood beside me, eyes wet, but with a smile that for the first time belonged to a man who truly wanted to be here to be a father. When we came home, our small room was filled with what we needed. A tiny crib, soft curtains, neatly stacked pillows. Simple things, but they held the quiet substance of a new home, modest and genuine. I watched Aaron do things he'd never done before. Washing bottles, prepping clothes, reading articles about newborn care. None of it felt like performance. It was change, real, quiet, change growing inside him. I wasn't seeking revenge, nor did I want payback to define our new life. But deep down, I hoped the fragments of the past would see the future they once tried to steal. That's why, one afternoon, Aaron walked into the room with a small envelope in his hand. He placed it on the kitchen table before pouring me a cup of tea. "I sent it," he said simply. I knew what he meant. I looked at the thick envelope, no heavy words, no explanations. Inside was a printed photo of Michael, sleeping softly in my arms, and a copy of his birth certificate, the mother's name clearly written, Casey Miller. Aaron told me he had gone to the nursing home where Viola was staying for medical supervision. He handed the envelope to the attendant and left. He didn't want to see his mother's reaction. His action was simply opening a small door, letting the truth walk into a locked room by itself. I held the photo against my chest, feeling the paper warm from his touch. I thought of Viola's face, those eyes once sharp as steel. That instructive smile every time she redrew the borders of her world. Now, a photo and a name were all that remained. The next day, I received no word from the nursing home. My phone showed calls from my mother, a few friends, a few baby supply deliveries. Life went on as usual. But at night, while Michael slept soundly in the crib beside our bed, I stayed awake, feeling an ache as I imagined the faces that would see that photo. Would Viola feel something tremble inside her, or would she float on her practiced confidence, assuring herself that the picture was a piece of paper? A week later, Aaron got a call from the nursing home. I heard him speak softly with the nurse, his voice low and tense. They said Mrs. Viola had received the envelope and looked at the photo longer than usual. She quietly folded it, put it away, and asked to be left alone. That was all we heard. A few evenings later, I drove alone to a small park, pushing Michael's stroller so he could nap in the cool air. The street lights curved like strings of pearls across the sky, and I thought about everything that had happened. Aaron and I spoke more about the future, about how we'd raise our son, the values we wanted to pass on, and how he would never let our family be ruled by fear or control again. He mentioned he would keep sending money for Viola's treatment, not to atone, but to ensure she had proper care. That was his choice, an act of conditional forgiveness, not acceptance. Days went by. Michael learned to smile in response, his eyes widening at every new wonder. One night, as he slept peacefully, I held his photo and smiled, a quiet smile filled with certainty. We had chosen the path that needed no applause, no spectacle. We had chosen freedom, a silent, steadfast kind of freedom, and we would let this new life speak for itself. Perhaps after all this, I finally understood. Sometimes you don't need to win against anyone, you just need not to lose yourself. Everyone has a Viola in their life, a memory, a wound, or a voice that once silenced them. But time will teach you that true peace comes from daring to keep living, and daring to smile again. If you're watching this video, Leave me a comment, tell me where you're watching from, and what has helped you find your own peace. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe and come along with me on more journeys filled with heart.